Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am the man of the hour, the tower of power, too sweet to be sour, Renegade Operative, and once again, I am talking to you guys about an opinion piece on Resident Evil 3 Remake. This will be my swan song in terms of opinion pieces for RE3 Remake. Why? Because my final opinion piece, and I did a video like this similar, was talking about the cut content from Resident Evil 2 Remake. Talking about the beta discussions, everything under the sun, what worked and what didn't, before Capcom decided to put everything on the cutting room floor. This video will be no different, however, there will be a concise format, and that format will entail things being inconsequential or important as they cut things or alter things in Resident Evil 3 Remake. This is just my opinion, of course, so if I say something that obviously gets under your skin a little bit, don't worry, let's get in the comment section, let's talk about it. That is how we roll. Let's start off with the top. If you would like to see my Resident Evil 2 Remake video with those cuts detailed, you can check it out in the pinned comment section below. We're going to talk about the first cut that wasn't implemented in Resident Evil 3 Remake, and this is live selection. Live selection branching story paths. This obviously being cut was very important for several reasons. This added replay value to the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, since that game was definitely shorter compared to the OG Resident Evil 2. Capcom decided to make a choice system. This choice system would basically detail situations hypothetically like Jill Valentine running away from Nemesis or Jill Valentine actually fighting the creature. This would not only create gameplay scenarios, but it would also create story paths that would divert if you pick differing choices. Hell, the most prominent decision involves the choice at the end where Jill decides to either push Nemesis or jump off. That not only affects the ending, but it also affects the fate of Nikolai. Hilariously enough, Capcom had a response for this, and it basically details itself paraphrased into PR bullshit garbage. The response was that they wanted to focus on a consistent story, a consistent point A to point B narrative. Therefore, live selection could not factor into this, and they wanted a singular canon ending. That would be all well and good, except cutting this piece out of the game effectively cuts out your replay value. Therefore, every subsequent run of Resident Evil 3 Remake is obviously the same from a narrative perspective. Therefore, there's nothing new and engaging when there is actual gameplay changes in later modes like Inferno and Nightmare that changes the mode into an arranged style difficulty. There's nothing to go back to except for just skipping the cutscenes, and that's it, instead of discovering new plot at each and every turn when making just a small choice. Damn, you know, now that I think about it, you can even add the argument that this adds gameplay variation as well. So it's a shame they did not consider it for the final cut. The next cut that we have is no enhanced ammo, and I would say it's important. Not the biggest deal in the world, but you have to understand this is more gameplay variety being cut. What enhanced ammo was the enhanced bullets that you would get once you decide to either individually mix gunpowder A's or gunpowder B's multiple times. It has to be just that one gunpowder over and over again, I think like 10 times, and then the reloading tool will ask you, do you want to make enhanced ammo? You say yes, and then your master class shotgun or your master class handgun will turn into a weapon of devastation as you use enhanced ammo to either stun Nemesis or blow away other enemies just like that. The only downside to the original game is that you can only use enhanced ammo on particular weapons. With the enhanced handgun rounds, you can only use that with Jill's signature Stars pistol. With the enhanced shotgun rounds, you can only use it on the base shotgun. This could have been something that the remake could have improved. Sadly, it's not in the game and it was not meant to be. Alright, so I'm going to trailblaze through these next two questions like a stallion. So the removal of weapons and the removal of costumes, are they important or inconsequential? They are definitely important, yes. More replay value being removed. It is cool for the costume side that they decided to keep the Stars costume. However, where is everything else? You know, where is everything else? Like Regina's Dino Crisis cosplay for Jill Valentine. Where is the police outfit, you know, that she gets? Where is the casual outfit with the blue top and the black pants? All this stuff is like, it could have been put into the game, and it seemed really weird that they focus on a lot of other new costumes in Resident Evil 2 Remake, but not in Resident Evil 3. I know this is really nitpicking because, once again, I don't care that much like other people do about cosmetics. However, that being said, the previous point is correct that they definitely put more effort into RE2 with having more costumes, and they didn't even try for this game. The removal of weapons means that Nemesis, obviously being sort of on this whole risk reward system, is basically still not that great in the remake. Sure, you get handgun parts, you might get ammo. However, you would get like totally new weapons from downing Nemesis several times. And because of a factor that happens later on when I answer this question in regards to the cut levels, this does not happen often with Nemesis encounters and him dropping stuff for Jill to pick up. Once again, this is really weird that they did this. Like, they cut out the STI Eagle, that was a beast handgun. They cut out the Western shotgun, the first aid boxes, the freeze rounds, and the minigun, the obvious bonus special weapon that you get for completing the game on higher difficulties and getting a good rank. And I think that's just really strange that they took this out. Once again, removing these weapons removes the replay value of the gameplay. Therefore, because it's not in the remake, it means that it's obviously not that great of a decision. Moving on to something inconsequential, finally, is the change for the Demon Sword of Paracelsus and the Mind Thrower. And the reason why I think this is inconsequential for once, and I know I just ranted about the weapons being removed, hear me out for a second. The Mind Thrower is technically in the game, but in a different way. They have mind rounds. Obviously, it doesn't excuse the removal of the freeze rounds from the grenade launcher. However, mine rounds are in the game, so I don't think that a mine thrower would even change much. You know what I mean? Like, if they just put mine rounds and the freeze rounds in the game, then I would be perfectly content with just that. But because there is mine rounds in the game in some fashion, I can't be too asked about the mine thrower actually not being in this game. At least the ammo type is in this game in some fashion. Next up, we're talking about the change of the Demon Sword of Paracelsus to the finger. I don't like the name of the finger. I think it's dumb. I think it's like some sort of sexual innuendo name going on. I don't know where that came from in my goddamn brain and my mind, but you know what? I'm gonna leave that in the recording. Anyway, the fingering gun being in this game, it's dumb in terms of a name, but honestly, seeing Jill hold that thing and blast Nemesis, I really don't care that it's been changed, honestly, outside of the name being ludicrous. It's a more portable electric gun, and the game is already ridiculous. Resident Evil is ridiculous. Jill holding this goddamn big-ass rail gun and shooting things, I mean, come on. I'm really not that fussed about it, honestly. The previous gun that was the Demon Sword was obviously old, and it was a signature sort of telling of the environment, which I'll talk about later, which was the Dead Factory. I think a gun like that only applied to the Dead Factory and not really the change that involved the nest, even though I think the nest change is kind of weird in comparison. But the gun itself is still in the game, it's still there in some fashion. It just doesn't work like the classic RE3 offering, and that's fine. I would rather have it in the game in a different way than to be cut entirely. The next one is the altering of the Dead Factory for Nest 2. And I'm honestly 50-50 about this. On the one hand, the aesthetic and the background and the backdrop of an old decrepit factory that William Birkin was working on was ingenious for the old game. It gave the factory a rusted up look that you normally don't see in any of the modernized labs in the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. The problem seems to stem from the fact that they decided to take this and turn this into Nest 2. And Nest 2 is basically just a fully functioning laboratory that you've seen akin in the original Resident Evil 2 remake. I think that once again, at least it's still in the game, so it's not gone. The only thing you could argue is that the aesthetic of the original looks a little bit more decrepit and appeasing compared to a spotty, clean lab that you already saw in the previous game. The full level is not gone, and I'm really appreciative that they decided to take this stage and add their own flair and add their own things to it. At the same time, the look of the original, the feel, the griminess, man, the dirt everywhere, it was just cool. The sanitation pit, it was just a cooler look in comparison, and I'm just gonna be that indecisive guy, that 50-50 guy on this statement. Next up on the list is talking about stage removal. Now, Resident Evil 3 is very prominent with shit like this. We're talking like big time set pieces and places removed just for compensation on time. So what we have here is the park that's gone. The park was an area where, you know, I guess it wasn't really too plot important, other than setting up the fact that yes, you had to travel through the park and get a couple of keys and get some puzzles fixed in order to finally figure out you needed to fight the Gravedigger. I think that was the biggest piece. I don't remember, but I know that eventually Nikolai says another mutant. He runs off. You do get some exposition about the incoming thermobaric missile hitting town, so I guess that's important. But the park is gone now, and so is the graveyard. All that shit, finito, done. Now, the extended Raccoon City streets, this offered up more plot scenarios. Obviously, it dealt with the fact that Jill was running away from the goddamn bald-headed, Kit Kat-headed, relentless pursuer Nemesis, and it created tension. It created more of a feel that you were on these city streets trying to survive. There was a lot of scenarios going on, a lot of alternate choices. This really was the crux of the beginning of the game for Resident Evil 3, and it's quite a shame that the extended city streets got cut, because this leads to not seeing Nemesis that often in the remake. All that stuff gone. Raccoon Press gone. All those set pieces out of here. Also the bar thing as well. I think that's also eliminated when you first meet Carlos, or you can optionally meet Carlos in that location or meet him at Raccoon Press. It gave you options, man. It gave you opportunities. Now let's get the biggest knife out of the drawer and cut the bullshit. This is when they cut the biggest point in the original, and we're talking about the fabled clock tower. Well, I guess you could say it's in the game. You get a nice exterior shot of it, just a little bit across the lake, right in the pale moonlight. But guess what? You won't be going inside of it. No sir, not anytime soon. You'll be seeing that exterior, but not the interior, and that's the problem. This is where all of the plot relevant stuff in the hospital happens. What they decided to do in Resident Evil 3 Remake is they decided to alter this so Carlos goes on this suicide mission in the hospital to get all of the stuff for Jill, and then he comes back, and then it's just all relative in one location, not the clock tower. I don't understand. They're right near it in the remake. Jill collapses outside right near St. Michael's clock tower. I don't understand why this couldn't be a unique level, and then maybe you could backtrack and go to the hospital and then go to Ness or whatever you plan to do from there. It's so easy, but they make it so simple and lazy, and they do it like this. All of the cool stuff that you see in St. Michael's, gone. All of the sort of things you can get, gone. All of the puzzles, all that shit, all of the creatures, everything like that, the big battle in the courtyard, whatever, it still takes place, but it's not as memorable as RE3 original. It's not like Carlos jumps out and he helps you if you do a certain action. That's like all after the fact, and I just don't understand. I don't understand why they couldn't do more unique level designs. It's the epitome of lazy here. Nemesis Type 2 relentlessly pursues you during this level, and you don't even get that. You don't even see more dog nemesis plaguing the hospital, because I guess they're like, oh, that's too much data, he should be outside, let's just go with that. And I guess that's one of the faults of that design, as opposed to the other Type 2 where he's like smaller and has tentacles all over his body and his coat is charred. I just really would say this is super important, and there's no freaking way that this is inconsequential at all. This is a big piece gone. Now, next up is removing most of the puzzles within the game. Well, the remake is like, fuck. It's like there's only really two distinct puzzles throughout the majority of the game, and the first one is the Kite Bros power conductor puzzle, where you have to align certain letters in order to cut on the subway cars. I found this puzzle to be relatively easy. I got it after a few tries. All you have to do is pay attention, see what train car aligns with the proper conductor, and you're good to go. Sometimes you will get context clues, sometimes Jill will talk and remind you what she's doing wrong, what she's doing right. I think that's what happened in my playthrough, and I eventually got it over time. The second puzzle is a joke. It's a complete joke. All you have to do is synthesize the vaccine to the proper number, and then you're completely done. It's over with. I would even say that Resident Evil 2 Remake had a few brain busters in there, where you actually had to think and read the context clues a little more often than not, especially with the chess puzzle on the wall. Either way, the idea of placing key items, the idea of putting the gems into the stones, the hollow stone points, so you can open up the gate that goes to Raccoon Park, everything has been severely either dumbed down or taken out and changed completely. It's not the same. I guess you could say breaking up the monotony is definitely important in a survival horror game, so you're not just like running and gunning all the time. I will say this though, fuck the sewer puzzle, fuck the water puzzle, fuck the sewer puzzle, fuck it, just completely. That puzzle is a piece of garbage, RNG nightmare, waste of time. I hate just sitting there for like 20 to 30 minutes never getting the solution at all. Like, it could be completely wiped out of the original RE3 and I still wouldn't care less. Okay, I just noticed, goddamn, this video's going on 20 minutes. Wrap it up, T-minus, finish the story of this video. Okay, we're gonna finish it, and then we're gonna go into saying my outro and then plugging and all that stuff. So what I have in my notes is people saying that, hey, Dario Rosso's body was cut. He goes into the truck in Resident Evil 3 Remake, and he's never seen or heard from again. In the original game, I believe you could backtrack all the way to that area after a certain point, and you will find his dead body, zombies eating his corpse. It's a tragic story because his daughter died. He's going a little bit loco. He decides to not take Jill's advice, and then he stuffs himself in the truck to an unknown fate in the remake, and he dies in the original. I think he was going to die anyway. I find this to be actually inconsequential. I firmly apologize, Dario Rosso fans, all two of you. I am sorry, but this guy is so minor, even more minor than the UBCS characters that you barely see on screen anyway. He's more minor than those guys. I just don't see the hype, and obviously he gets blown up in the nuclear explosion anyway, even if you don't see him. Now let's move on to something that's actually important. Barry freaking Burton, the Berry Man, the Sandwich Man. Barry Burton does not show up because of the changes with the lie selection being removed. Therefore, he does not pick up Jill in the chopper near the end of the game. I really don't remember which ending is the preferred ending when it comes to canon. I believe it is the one where Nikolai survives and Barry comes to rescue the team. I think that's the one that is the preferred canon ending, but don't quote me on that. If you do, correct me in the comments, let me know. However, that being said, it kind of sucks. That is also not in the game. They kind of just did a bait and switch. If you don't shoot Nikolai, he just kills Jill, he kills Carlos, and that's it. That's the only thing that they do. I guess it's kind of cool that you have technically a bad ending, so to speak, in the game. However, that being said, it still does not help the fact that they took this out completely, and this big reference, this big tie-in to Resident Evil 1 with a STARS member actually coming to save Jill's ass just screams disappointment that is not in this game. Nemesis not killing Brad Vickers. I think this is important because Nemesis doesn't kill his target, but Brad Vickers is a sissy anyway, so let's move on. Jill does not go to the RPD. That's also important because, once again, she is there on a mission to get out of the city, find any other survivors, get some sort of communication. This does not happen. Instead, Carlos goes there, and I would say narratively, it's only set up because they want you to see the events of RE2 Remake unfold. They could have done that with Jill, though, and that would have made more significance because, once again, Jill knows Brad. Carlos does not know Brad. Therefore, Carlos killing Brad does not have any emotional resonance whatsoever, as opposed to Jill Valentine doing the deed. I don't get that decision at all. Okay, moving on. That was a really dumb change. Let's move on to No Mercenaries mode. No Mercenaries mode, once again, is another important thing. This kills the replay value just by cutting it out and putting in Resident Evil Resistance. And I tried giving Resistance a shot, but the peer-to-peer and the bad matchmaking really sucked the life out of that game, along with some bad pairing up with the skill-based matchmaking. It sucked ass. Next up, we're moving on to the removal of enemies like the Gravedigger, and my notes say that actually there's more. Holy shit. So the removal of the Gravedigger, Nemesis having altered forms, spiders, brain suckers, leeches, and crows being removed. To be honest, I feel somewhat indecisive here, and I somewhat feel like some are inconsequential, some are important. Let's go on the list. I think the Gravedigger was important. Having that boss character would have added to the game. Nemesis having his original forms back would have done justice. It would have been more type 2 chasing, as opposed to putting that big dog Nemesis in an arena style deathmatch. I think that the spiders are useless in the original RE3. I think that the brain suckers are palette swaps of the Dream demos, and therefore they are not that important. I think that the leeches are also sucky, and I think that crows are good for jump scares. Maybe they should have been in RE3, because in RE2 they weren't really doing much, but in 3 they were great for scares, and that's it. That's how I feel about the enemy removal. Those are my opinions. The removal of the epilogues is important because it gives you story context. It gives you narrative context. You see the setup of other games. You see the setup right here. You see what's going on with Leon, what's going on with Claire, what's going on with Chris. Claire and Chris are prominent in Resident Evil Code Veronica X. You get to take a peer into the life of the surviving members of Raccoon City, the surviving members of STARS, and you see what's going on behind the hood before they go to their next objective. The only thing I would like is that I kind of would want these endings to be acted out, as opposed to being put on some text and being put on a backdrop image just for us to see. I think maybe a minute's worth of dialogue, a minute's worth of conveying what's going on with the voice actors doing their part would have been really nice to see in Resident Evil 3 Remake. Alright, I almost completely forgot here. What makes the analysis video so special is that there are times where I go back and I look at the concept art and see if I can find anything pertinent worth pointing out. So we're gonna do that here with all the concept art in the game. The first one is this sort of take on Jill's new outfit. The one thing I noticed is that for this one right here, she has a lot more midriff going on, and this was changed in the final version to the ones you see over here. So we're gonna go ahead and move on. Carlos practically looks exactly just like he does in game, unchanged, everything. Moving on. Here's the cast and crew. They pretty much all look the same except for Tyrell. He has a little bit more hair on his head. Let's move on. Next we have the design of Nemesis himself. Pretty much just similar to his in-game model. Bag head, everything. Here we have the differing designs, and this one is interesting to the far left because it looks like some naked pustule BDSM crap going on, and this one is like some variant of the coat, looks a little bit more traditional in a sense. This one is kind of a mix of what they wanted to go with, like the BDSM clothes. That's so fucking funny. And it looks like there's a rocket on his arm or some type of like weapon. I don't know. It looks like an RPG though. And this one is just like Edward Scissorhands going bald, the experience. I like the minigun here too. I almost forgot to point that out. Nemesis was going to have his signature minigun and a briefcase, maybe for other weapons. Ultimately, that got scrapped and it turned into the flamethrower, I assume. Here's the minigun being wielded along with an alternate costume that looks like more fatigue. Like, it looks like something out of MGS in terms of clothes. That's cool. I like that. Let's keep moving forward. Here is the dog Nemesis, looking just like he does in game. These are the hunter variants, and this is Gamma. These other ones, though, clearly it seemed like there were going to be differing types of hunters in the game in terms of design, as opposed to the ones we just saw like in the hospital, but we didn't get that. We just simply got one that kind of not even looks like this. The claws are different. Like, that's weird. Interesting though. I would have liked to see the one on the top right here. This one, this guy would have been interesting because these tentacles bursting out of his arms, like, what will that do and what type of death scene will that create? This is just like level design, destroyed Raccoon City, City in Peril, more of Jill's apartment. Skipping through that, it looks like there's a guy that killed himself and you could raid his house. It's like blood in the fridge, so that really gives me like Silent Hill 4 of The Room vibes. Here is the crashed bobblehead sign that comes after you in the game, so obviously that was always planned along with the theater. It's unfortunate you could not go inside of it because there were rumors that people were saying you could go inside of the theater, but obviously that does not happen. There's Barjack. The restaurant, or, well, not the restaurant. That looks like the warehouse that... I don't know why I said restaurant on my mind. I know I made an error that you don't go into Barjack, but you actually do. No, that was the restaurant I was talking about earlier. So that was like on my brain for a second. This is the warehouse. It reminds me of the end of this game. It also kind of looks similar to the warehouse in the beginning of the OG game. So it kind of like threw me for a loop, like two loops. This is the parking lot garage. Nothing really special here in these shots in particular. Moon, donuts, you know, you got the supermarket here. It's interesting because I think this area right here is different, but the idea of a convenience store is not. There is one actually in the game. There's the Stagla gas station, which is another place we really don't go to, unfortunately. We go to it in the original game. There's the boutique shop as well. Another thing that was in the original game that we don't go to. So we got more buildings, the industrial complex outside before you meet the Drain Demos. That's an interesting shot. It looks like a nurse is slumped over on a wall. Obviously, she has to be a zombie. No other way. We got some dead patients that could have been a little bit more scarier in the hospital. Like there's one, I think there's one zombie that gets off the gurney and he scares you. It should have been more of that. And then we have the Ness, typical stuff. Nothing out of the ordinary for Ness, just the equipment for Umbrella. So we're moving forward. Here's an interesting screenshot of Nemesis wearing some socks. He got them socks. Like, and you see some dead scientists, obviously due to the Nemesis experiment. And some guys watching, which I assume are Umbrella workers. Like, some people said that might be Wesker and Spencer. You know, I don't know though. I somehow I doubt it, because I think Wesker was like underground during this time. I could definitely believe that Spencer though. Could definitely believe it. And I don't know during this time after the Raccoon City incident if Spencer and Wesker was on good terms or not. I don't remember. Anyway, you got the, I say Tyrant, no, that's Nemesis on the table. Here's another shot here, grotesque looking, pretty sick. Wish that was in the game. Maybe like a Nemesis prototype or something, a failed experiment that could have been something, and maybe like the OG himself, Nemesis, eats the guy and he gets bigger. That would have been cool. This is a nice shot right here. Some nice concept art of Nemesis trying to get grabby hands with Jill Valentine. Here's another like super creepy shot. More of Nemesis. He has hair on his head too. That's like so disturbing, dude. And pimples like on the top of his eyes. That's just creepy. A cool shot. We're getting through the concept art. I think these are storyboards. Obviously, we probably see these reenacted in the game. That's the beginning of the game. That's the Mega Man sort of model that's used in the toy shop. And that's it. That's it for concept art. So hopefully you enjoyed my quick analysis of that at the end of the video. Just a little parting gift. I know that people might think that I went hard at this game in the video about the cuts. I'm just really giving you my honest opinion on that. And I want to reiterate that I gave this game a 7.2 or a 7.3, and by no means to me is that a bad score. I think a 7 is pretty spectacular for a game of this nature. The problem that knocks it down from greatness, the reason why Resident Evil 3 Remake did not get a 9 or a 10, is because they have this cut content, and this cut content that is in the package was completely unacceptable for a remake. As a game on its own merits, it's fine. It has great gameplay. It has some great additions. I like how they expanded places like the hospital when they actually did. I like how they expanded Tyrell's role. Carlos and Jill, they're awesome. They steal the show. The problem is just the way they coordinated and built this game to have less than Resident Evil 2, and I did not like that fact. It's a great game, but it's not a good remake, and that's the problem. Either way, this is Renegade Operative signing off. What did you guys think of my reaction and opinions to the cuts? Sound off in the comments, let me know. And once again, take care. I hope you're being safe out there in the midst of COVID land. Be sure to stay safe, keep your mask on, and get the vaccine when possible. Once again, you know, I'm just gonna sign out. Hopefully you guys were entertained and you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys for the next one. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Later.